everybody. It is my pleasure to be here to teach this very, very important message of today, because there are a lot of things going on in America that ought not be happening. If we were operating by the mechanism by which our constitutional republic was created, we wouldn't be in many of the situations that we're in. For example, right now, there is an Amish farmer who is looking at spending the rest of his life in federal prison because he made a salve out of chickweed for his friends and families and neighbors. Nobody died. Nobody got a rash. Nobody even got sick from this salve. His crime was that the FDA didn't like his label. We have a veteran, a military veteran, 76 years old, in federal prison right now in Colorado. His crime was building a fish pond on his ranch land. A stock pond, by the way, that was designed by the Army Corps of Engineers and approved by his state and local government. However, the EPA said, we don't like it. We believe that this stock pond could possibly contaminate a river that is 6 miles away. We have people in prison, in jail right now, being held without bond for protesting peacefully what they believed was the unlawful taking of state land and people's land. They didn't burn anybody's donut shop. They didn't steal anybody's TVs. They didn't destroy anybody's vehicle. They didn't even threaten anyone with violence. And yet we have a federal court system that believes these people are such a danger to society that they cannot be free pending and during their trials. As a prosecutor for over a decade, I can tell you that I have personally seen people accused of murder be released on bond, pending and during their trials. This doesn't make any sense to me. And yet, here we are, even on the state and local levels. I've made friends along the way. One of my friends, her name is Nicole, and she lives in Arlington Heights, Chicago. And Chicago is cold. And they like to grow their own fruits and vegetables. And so they decided to try to extend their growing season by creating a temporary greenhouse over their planting beds. The city decided they didn't like it because it was too noisy and threatened her with fines of $1,000 a day if she did not remove this temporary structure. She showed up at her city council meeting with signatures from every single person in her neighborhood and beyond who said, no, we have no problem with this. This is fine. She should be allowed to let it stay. They threatened her property if she refused to comply. We have infringements upon our essential rights every day. And because we failed to teach the right things for a very long time, because we've been teaching the wrong things for a very long time, Americans have become federal-centric. We've started developing this idea that our world revolves around Washington, D.C. It is the sun and we are the planet. I'm reminded of what Thomas Paine said about Great Britain. He said, how ridiculous has it become that the satellite now governs the planet. And that's how I feel about the state's relationship to Washington, D.C. How ridiculous has it become that our states are being governed by their creation? It was never supposed to be that way. And because we've become so federal-centric, we now believe that all of our problems originate in Washington, D.C., but all of our solutions rest there as well. And nothing could be further from the truth. I think that one of the biggest culprits to this misunderstanding, to this miseducation, can I just simply say to this deception, is that we are teaching that the only check and balance on federal activity is the federal government itself. We talk about the checks and balances of Congress on the executive branch, or the legislative branch on the judicial branch. Everybody's talking about how the judicial branch can check the executive branch. But what kind of government do we actually live in if its only check of power is itself? Does that make any sense at all? I mean, how many of you think that those who designed our constitutional republic were pretty smart people? Would you be willing to say that even a few of them may have been genius level? So given our credibility to them, how do we believe being smart and some of them genius would create a government that's only check and balance on its power was itself? Not only that, we've taken it a step further. Not only is its only check and balance itself, its only definition of its own power is itself. We allow the Supreme Court, at every whim, to sanction and exercise power beyond the grant of the Constitution. We have allowed presidents in America for decades to exercise more power than British kings have exercised since 1688. And our legislative branch is not doing any better. Can I tell you, I spoke personally to a congressman in Michigan. His name is Tim Walberg. And he looked me in the eye and told me that the only limit of your congressman in his power is what he can convince the majority of his co-workers to vote for. He told me that the Constitution was an object of perfection that we should strive for, but it is not an attainable goal. And therefore, the only limit to congressional power is whatever they can pass in a vote. Can I tell you, that is not the definition of a constitutional republic. That is the definition of a banana republic. So everybody has, we went through this whole elective change in November. And no matter who you were supporting in the presidential election, everybody was looking for the president to fix all of this. But here's the problem. The president fixing all of this is looking to the wrong place again for the solution. Looking to the federal government to fix the federal government's problem. It's not going to happen that way because it was not designed to happen that way. Not only that, you don't want the president to fix everything that's wrong with Washington, D.C. Because if the president has the authority to fix everything that's wrong with Washington, D.C., he's not a president anymore, he's a king. So this class is just a recognition. Isn't the federal government still out of control now, even though we've made this huge, massive administration change? I mean, we need to recognize that the federal government is still out of control. Why? Because it can't fix itself. It won't fix itself. And the problem is that we're working from a limited base here. How many people in Washington, D.C. can you count with great confidence that have a full and complete grasp on the function and operation of the government through the Constitution? I mean, I can think of 3. That's not going to change things. The power has never rested in the federal government. Thomas Jefferson explains the consequence and the solution. See, our designers of our constitutional republic did not make a kingdom, because if we were a kingdom, then all of our problems would come from Washington, D.C., and the only solutions that we would have would rest in Washington, D.C. And then, in a kingdom, when the internal checks and balances fail, the only remedy is revolution. You see, they gave us a constitutional republic so that we could check and balance the federal power without picking up a sword. They gave us an opportunity to expand liberty, to limit government, to, as they said, preserve the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity without picking up a sword. That was the only option they had. That's the only option they had had for 700 years. That's all they knew. And they said, no, we want better for our posterity. So in creating a constitutional republic, a union, a confederation of independent sovereign states, they created the greatest check and balance on central power through the states and the local governments. But look at this consequence. He says, if the states look with apathy on the silent descent of their government into the gulf which is to swallow all. We're going to find out a little bit later when we see what Jefferson is saying in completion here. That gulf which is to swallow all is a euphemism for Washington, D.C. He says, we will weep over our condition because our only remedy is a rod of iron. Because you see, if the states cannot check and balance the federal government, if the only option for the state to protect the liberty and the rights of its people, to manage its land, to manage its resources, to protect its powers reserved, if the only solution rests in begging the federal government for mercy, then you are not a state, Utah. You are a colony in a kingdom. And the only solution your people have is revolution. But see, today we're going to understand, first and foremost, that Utah is not a colony. She just has to stop acting like one. We're going to discover that you were created as an independent, sovereign government. And that is the legal reality in which you still exist. We've got to go back to our roots. Remember where we came from so we can know who we are. So we can reacquaint ourselves with the power that rests in our hands to secure our own liberty. Because our founders gave us two great gifts. You see, they didn't just declare independence from Great Britain, they declared independence from kings forever. And they gave us the greatest opportunity, the opportunity to self-govern.